Welcome to another episode of the Moor Insights Strategy Data Center Podcast. My name is Matt Kimball. I'm a VP and Principal Analyst of Data Center Compute and Storage. That's a lot here at Moor Insights. And today is going to be a fun conversation. So we have a lot of podcasts that tend to be very informative in nature and kind of look at things from a vendor perspective, but today's going to be a little bit different. I have two guests that are going to talk about something I hear from CIOs and IT executives quite a bit, and that is how do I achieve kind of the cloud operating model in my environment and enable better control and better performance of all those mission critical and business critical applications that are driving my business. And so today I have two folks with me, two friends that I'm really happy are here to kind of talk about this with. The first is Christine McMonigal from Intel, Senior Director or Director, let's just say expert on HCI marketing for Intel. Does that work, Christine?
That works, yep.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And I have Allan Waters, who is also an expert and guru on HCI and marketing, product marketing, solution marketing at Nutanix. Great to have you both with me, so thank you.
Great to be here.
Yeah, great to be here.
Hey, before we get into this, where are y'all based? So, Christine, Intel, I'm guessing either California or Oregon.
Yeah, I'm based in Oregon.
Right on. Hillsboro or?
Well, that's where I work, the office I work out of, and my home's in Portland.
Excellent. Fantastic. And Allan, where are you?
I am in the beautiful state of New Hampshire up in the White Mountains. So we're supposed to be getting snow right now, but we're getting all rain. So sad.
Okay, where in New Hampshire are you?
Up near about midway up. There's a town called Plymouth. I'm around there.
What's your exact address, Allan?
I feel like you're stalking.
Find Allan.
As a Boston kid, I'm always curious about the general Boston area. So
you can come up skiing. Come on up skiing.
We can go up to Lunar. We can hit one of the.
Waterville Valley, man. It's all about Waterville Valley.
I know Waterville. Anyway, hey guys. So starting out, just want to kind of validate what I hear from kind of IT executives and business executives, right? As we go through digital transformation efforts, IT modernization efforts. The business, there's this tension. The business always wants more, right? They have to be faster. And in order to be faster and more responsive to the market, they need the most cutting edge applications and workloads enabling their business functions, right? Data analytics, AI, right? And it's always AI with a question mark after, because it's like they don't even fully understand it, but they know they need it, right? Right. I mean, but there is this need to be faster, do more, and be more responsive to the market and to customers. And on the other side, you have an IT organization that is operating, infrastructure and software that is years old, generations old. They're overwhelmed, kind of break fix mentality, really trying to respond to the needs of the market. And that creates some challenges, right? It introduces shadow IT and other, challenges that IT faces on a normal basis. That's what I hear. What do y'all hear? And you can, I'll let you fight over who starts first, but what do you hear when you talk to customers and you talk to partners?
Christine, all you, go ahead.
All right. I think that, in the tech world, we tend to think that it's our technology that's driving these things, but in reality, I think it's business challenges that these organizations are facing. Right? They're trying to deliver a better customer experience, or retain talent, or meet government regulations, et cetera. Right? And that's what tends to really be driving these kinds of transformation and modernization efforts. And then it's up to, Allan and Nutanix and Intel to really deliver solutions that can address those challenges and help them meet those head on.
Yeah, I really like that. And kind of where I sit from kind of the Nutanix cloud platform, hyperconverged, throw all those terms at you already, Matt. You can check those, the bingo. Those talks are really, but there's a couple things I think along the way. It's taking those mission critical apps, right, and having a platform to run them on. But it's also giving nights and weekends back to IT, like you were saying, and simplifying their lives, right? So there's a couple things in there that we can explore, right? One is, simplifying the IT environment, and the other is, hey, what do you need? How can we run those mission critical apps, those business critical apps, that Oracle database, right? On a simplified platform, right? And there's a couple of things in here that I think hyperconverged and that Nutanix and Intel can bring.
It seems to me that when we look at kind of the data estate, the modern data estate, right? First, digital transformation is nothing new. I was a tech person for a long time. I was an IT executive. I was an IT consultant, and we were transformed. We were using technology to drive the business. We've been doing it for decades, right? This is a new wave of transformation, but it's really nothing new. But what I find interesting is this kind of this use of the cloud by the business to achieve business outcomes that maybe IT can't deliver today, right? And I say that because when I see that, and I see IT trying to take back over control of their kind of environments, what has happened is the business users, whether it's a DevOps team that's kind of embedded within the business, or it's an analytics person that's sitting, in a business unit, or even IT themselves, they've all been kind of spoiled by the cloud, right? That instantaneous, I need something, I need it now, I can't wait. And my time to value, what I'm being measured by, my time to value metric is incredibly difficult to achieve. And I can only do that if I am using a cloud-like operating model within my environment. And that to me is kind of the solution, if you will, that can kind of bridge the gap between IT and the users, the business users or the business units, if it's deployed properly, right? But the question is, can you get there? And you both play in this space. Have you seen organizations that have deployed a cloud operating model effectively? And what is a cloud operating model? And these are the things I want to kind of untease with you and unpack a little bit and kind of get your thoughts on. But let's jump in. When you started last time, Christine, let's start with you, Alan. When you hear cloud operating model, what does that mean to you? And I want to get into kind of limitations that are experienced today, but we'll get to that in a second. But first off, talk to us about what you think is like a cloud operating model within a business.
Yeah, and I think you can even dig into that a little bit, right? Because you think of cloud, you think public cloud operating model. It's everything you get from a public cloud. But there's no reason, if you have the right platform, right, that you can't get those same things on a private cloud on-prem, right? Mm-hmm. So the way I look at it is why not have an environment where you get all of those things, that you have on a public cloud available on-prem, and then have a single platform to control everything. Management control plane, data control plane, and have it all managed as one. So, and being able to, and some vendors out there make it sound like, you take your VMs, run it on-prem, then move it up to the public cloud. It all sounds so easy, but when you start digging into it with where the data lives and the security and the IOPS and the resiliency of doing that, it's not an easy thing. And this is something that Nutanix brings to the table with that cloud operating model, whether it being on-prem and being able to move workloads and VMs. But there's a lot to it, and rather than setting up lots of different silos, and we haven't even started talking about being cloud smart with applications, right? Knowing where the appropriate place in the cloud to run. Do you run it on-prem? You got to run it in the public cloud. So there's a whole lot of different things to dig in with that cloud operating model.
I was going to build on that if I can jump in here. I think that an organization should be setting a cloud strategy that outlines their business objectives up front. And then the cloud operating model is really the tactical plan in order to meet those business objectives for the cloud and be able to support the ongoing operations, management, governance of your cloud service delivery. So, your cloud operating model should include things like, your standardized platform or set of platforms that's going to allow for a consistent management framework across different cloud environments. And it should be able to support, VMs as well as containers and cloud native. It's got to be able to deliver the kinds of scalability, resiliency, security that a business requires, as well as sort of that short-term agility for things like bursting, et cetera. And it's really got to outline the best practices for your developers too, and how they're going to be able to deliver apps or code that helps them take advantage of the various cloud infrastructure that you have available, and takes advantage of the advancements and underlying technologies as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would also say that a cloud operating model is also a change management exercise. So it's really got to outline that kind of agile team structure that crosses the traditional IT boundaries that people may be used to in order to be able to, provide the kinds of business success that people are looking for when they invest in the cloud.
Yep. Yeah, that's a really good point, Christine. And I'm glad you said that, because I think there's this, and Alan, you hit on this a little bit as well, this notion that, I have my cloud environment, I have my traditional data center environment, whatever we want to call that today. And then I have this new thing called the edge, which really isn't new either, that's running, right? And I have applications that run here, I have applications that run here, and I have applications that run here. But the reality is, you have applications that run in all three or can run in all three simultaneously. You have data that's moving across all three elements of this data estate simultaneously. And how you manage that, how you govern it, how you secure it, those are really tough challenges to face. So I like the fact that you talk about developing a strategy, and the operating model is kind of the way you implement that across the organization. But what's interesting,
I want to talk real quick about, because there are some organizations out there that are all cloud, right? Their strategy is to go all cloud. And then really when you sit down and you start discussing, you talk about, well, how many apps do you have? Well, we have 400, 500 apps. Okay, are you going to get all 400 or 500 apps up in the public cloud? And what's your time frame for this? And what's your budget for this? It's like, oh, well, maybe some of these will stay on-prem. And then you start talking about the benefits of having that, unified control plane and everything to manage everything, the VMs and containers that Christine was talking about as one. So
mm-hmm.
there's some room for discussion there when you hear I'm all cloud.
Right. Or maybe it should be all hybrid cloud, right? And, you can modernize that on-premise infrastructure to deliver a cloud-like experience as well. And then you have this more seamless ability to place workloads wherever it makes sense: public cloud, on-premise, private cloud, edge, et cetera.
Yep. Oh, and I'm glad you said that, Christine, because it's a great segue, modernization of infrastructure, into kind of, what we want to talk about. So, there is no doubt that the workloads that are running today are a lot different than the workloads that were running, 5-6 years ago, to some degree, right? I mean, and it's interesting because this notion of, I remember a day when everybody talked about, well, hardware is hardware and software is software, and it's all kind of commoditized and all just kind of works. And that couldn't be further from the truth, right? The applications that are running today, even within AI, right? Training versus inference, generative AI versus recommendation systems, different types of analytics, different types of database applications, SQL versus NoSQL. They all have very unique requirements that translate into very unique hardware requirements. And so I'm going to build here, if you guys will kind of work with me for a second. and we're going to get to, I want to talk about Christine a little bit, and then we're going to talk about Alan a little bit as well. So Christine, on the hardware side, these very unique requirements mean that not all hardware is created equal, right? And you have to look at, so you want to, as a silicon provider, a silicon developer, a CPU provider, an accelerator provider, you want to develop platforms that can address all of these requirements, unique requirements. And if you can do it through one offering, that's fantastic. But it requires certain enablements to be made, right? And y'all at Intel have done some interesting stuff. It started in your fourth gen Xeon scalable processor, right? Y'all made some interesting tweaks to Xeon and architectural decisions that really kind of address what's going on in the data center. Do you want to talk to that? I feel like I'm probably
Yeah. No, that's a great lead in. We've definitely taken a stronger workload focused approach, starting with our fourth generation of Xeon processors than what we had in the past, and really kind of honing in on what is it going to take to help those most critical workloads perform best and deliver the kinds of experiences that developers desire, as well as deliver efficiency and power savings as well, as that increases in importance. So we really identified what some of those most critical workloads were, and down to kind of specific tasks within those workloads that are most commonly occurring. And we built accelerators into the processor itself. So instead of just the cores, you've got the cores paired with these targeted workload accelerators that are designed to accelerate things like AI, analytics, networking, storage, security. These tasks that are really critical parts of the most important workloads to run an organization, and really trying to help those not only perform stronger, but also more efficiently as well.
Yeah, there's this notion out there, and I love this discussion. There's this notion out there, when you look at kind of CPUs and you look at architectures, a lot of people, they immediately jump to the top level specifications on CPUs, right? And they don't look necessarily or critically at the underlying capabilities, right?
That's right.
This is where I think Intel has done such a fabulous job with its design, because you really have, I love the way you kind of looked at how these are being deployed out in real data centers and used in real data centers, and offloading those kind of otherwise very intensive or functions onto these discrete engines. To me, that is a lot more beneficial to an enterprise than, say, total number of cores or some other kind of superficial specifications. I love what y'all did. I'm really curious to see how that translates into kind of did fifth generation, but whatever follows fifth generation, and you continue your cadence. It's a great story. But none of that matters if you don't have software that can fully exploit all those capabilities, right?
That's exactly right. Yes.
Right. I wish we had a software company here that we could talk to that did that.
Oh, wait, I know. Pick me.
So what does Nutanix do? I mean, because yeah. I mean, really, the silicon can do so much, right? But what has been a hit with software in the past is sometimes, when you throw a hypervisor on, when you throw, a kind of control plane on top, you start to abstract the silicon from the app, and all of a sudden those capabilities get lost, or performance gets lost. Or what does Nutanix do to kind of ensure that all of these applications can run in near native states?
Yeah, and if you think about, if you take a step back for a second and think about where organizations are right now when we're thinking about AI, right? They're trying to figure out, do I take one of these large language models? Do I bring it in-house? Do I start modifying it myself to my own data, right? To the goodness that I have on-prem, right? And protecting it and giving all these benefits to my employees to do their, marketing or whatever, their analysis, whatever application they create. So do you bring all this in-house, and how do you get there? Right? Do I just use the public model and not worry about it, or do I create a competitive advantage by creating this AI application in-house? Right? So how do I get there? So really, then that brings us to Nutanix and all the great things that Christine was talking about on the hardware side. But we have a GPT in a box, right, with the GPUs and the Nutanix software, where an organization can get this this application ready AI, application ready box up and running, so that you can start your development on this AI application. And we can work with you on the GPUs and the CPUs and whatever needs you are needed for that application. But we can, Nutanix with this GPT in a box, taking advantages of everything Christine just talked about, and the Nutanix benefits for moving the software defined and getting an organization up and running to create their own AI application pretty quickly.
But AI is only one part, right? I mean, there's analytics, and this kind of goes to kind of the goodness of a Nutanix and an Intel. In the past, as an IT person, there used to be those workloads, and it used to be database. I'm dating myself. My big Oracle databases or SQL Server or Postgres databases, that they were like the off limits to virtualization back in the day, right? Virtualization first took over because there was a latency introduced through virtualization, even though it was 5-7% of processing capability, that impacted my application performance, right? So along comes Intel, and they say, you know what? We need to build in acceleration for data analytics, for AI, for database, and for the business critical apps that the business users really do require. What I love about what y'all did at Nutanix was, you took that performance tax, if you will, that came along as a result of virtualization in HCI, right? Which is the basis of a cloud operating model. And you did a lot of work at optimizing that to reduce that footprint. So now, that acceleration that Christine provides, my database application or my AI instance, whether it's training or inference, can realize that benefit, with very minimal impact to performance.
Yeah.
So I, as an IT guy, I get all the control I need. You, as a business user, you're getting the responsiveness you need. That's a really cool story.
Yeah, and if you take a look back to when HCI started out, right, the killer workload back then was EUC VDI, right, and that's what people it stayed there for a long time. But as far as how Nutanix has progressed and the advances that we've made with our software, and of course the performance increases that you get on the hardware with Christine, it moved to tier 2, tier 3. And now those mission critical Oracle databases and those AI applications, I mean, you can get 1 million IOPS. You can get a consistent sub-millisecond response times. So those worries are gone. And then even on the healthcare side, even with an Epic application, right? All great, for hyperconverged now with the performance and the resiliency that you're getting out of it now. So moving to software defined, it can do great things.
See, there really, what I hear you saying is there really are no more of those sacred cows when it comes to those applications that, you know what I mean? That, have to sit outside of what it would be my kind of,
right.
My controlled environment, right? I mean, pretty much, is there anything you can't run in one of these environments?
And usually the story, I know that this image has been around for a little bit, but usually what happens with hyperconverged is an organization who's had tier 3, traditional SAN for the longest time, right? They say, okay, we're going to give it a try, and they put a cluster over in the corner. And what happens with that cluster?
Do not move from that corner, cluster.
No, I know. What happens is they put a workload on it, right? And it's fantastic. And then the image I'll put in your head is Pac-Man, right? It starts eating that hyperconverged cluster starts eating up all the other workloads around the data center. And the great thing about hyperconverged, that you start
I like
small.
that analogy.
Yeah, and you scale out and get as big as you need with all the performance. So, now when you think about that, hyperconverged, you're going to think about a Pac-Man, a little Pac eating up all the workloads in the data center. And then that's exactly what happens to it.
Yeah, hyperconverged has really proven itself, I think, to be a highly capable type of infrastructure at this point that doesn't have those kinds of limitations. And when you look at the, workload accelerators that Intel's built in, it's the same workloads that run fantastic on Nutanix, that they have done a lot of optimization for. And together it really can deliver the kinds of performance and efficiency, security, that any of these top workloads require.
Well, Christine, we're going to have to get you to come over to Nutanix. You're doing a good
job. I'm still stuck in Pac-Man, and I'm trying to figure out which apps are the fruit that you would, go get.
I forgot there was fruit. It's been that long.
No, we'll get back to that one. But while we're fawning over Nutanix and how fantastic Nutanix is and the technology, I do want to go back to Intel a little bit, because y'all just released or just launched Emerald Rapids, which I want to brag on you a little bit. I know you're modest, so let me brag on you a little bit. It's socket compatible, so it's built on the same process as Sapphire Rapids, right?
That's right. Drop-in replacement, drop-in expansion. You can mix and match as you're adding and upgrading servers.
So here's what's really impressive about that. You did that, yet your performance per watt improvement is like 1.34. To that of the previous generation. Your workload acceleration is up to like 40% in some areas around AI, even in web and some of the kind of the not cool apps, I guess, if you will. We're still seeing about a 20% improvement, which is usually you're usually looking at a process node improvement to get those levels of performance improvements and performance per watt improvements. You did some really cool things engineering-wise to get to that, which is a really great story to tell. And I'm not going to ask you to, get into two tiles versus 4 tiles and UPI, 25% UPI speed increases and all that. But you really, I just want to say, you guys have done a fantastic job in taking Xeon and really kind of tweaking the best out of that process node to deliver real world performance improvements. So hats off to you. And I know that's going to be,
thanks, Matt.
I know that's going to be stood up and enabled through Nutanix. Yeah, I know you're going through the qualification process and all that neat stuff. But,
right.
But one of the things you did in there, I want you to hit on a little bit, is kind of a subtle shift in security posture with SGX to TDX, or the addition of TDX. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, we've had this confidential computing capability, SGX, for 2 or 3 generations now, I forget. Mm-hmm. And, it's been employed very successfully at a number of cloud service providers, as well as some large enterprises. But we're really taking it to the next level in the 5th generation Xeon processor, or Emerald Rapids, with the introduction of trust domain extensions, or TDX. And what TDX brings that we didn't have before is VM isolation along with that confidential computing. And that is a perfect fit for something like Nutanix that's operating in a virtualized environment. It really brings that next level security, but also that VM isolation, whether it's between VMs in a core data center or a public cloud provider.
And doesn't that also, that isolation, doesn't it also deliver kind of a, if I'm trying to enforce or adhere to SLAs as an IT org for my business users, that gives me that performance consistency?
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
yes, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that capability. Sorry, Alan. It is, hardware is cool. I'm sorry, I know. software guy.
Are we talking
Well,
about
it's-
microsegmentation there, Matt? What are you talking about?
I mean, the reality is that these things are so intertwined, right? If you
Yeah.
just upgrade your software, you're leaving performance and efficiency on the table. If you just upgrade your hardware, you might be leaving key software advancements on the table. So really, to deliver the, the performance, the efficiency, the security, you really got to look at both, and you got to dive a little deeper into what is the underlying infrastructure here, and what am I taking advantage of from Nutanix and Intel to make sure that you're really getting the most out of those IT refreshes and modernizing your infrastructure.
Yeah. It's funny you said it, right? You're right, because when you look at, as I talk to a lot of organizations, right, IT organizations, they're not running Pearly, which was the first generation of scalable, but they're running, much older versions of Xeon, and they're also running much older versions of Nutanix. We were talking about this pre-recording, right? I mean, HCI's, and Nutanix's, greatest success is kind of a challenge to some degree. It's worked so well. Organizations have deployed it, it's worked, and they've been like, okay, it works, I don't have to worry about it. And they haven't thought about what all of the advancements you've made, Nutanix, you personally, Allan, thank you. But I mean, all the capabilities that are there, and the way that, so let's go to, Nutanix cloud platform with management capabilities, with database capabilities, with unified storage, the way that can really take that control plane, centralized, and expand it out across the organization. And you can stand up these apps a lot more easily.
Yeah, I mean, in the way we look at it from the platform side of it, there's three different buckets, right? There's protecting the core, the core piece of the software, like the storage and so forth. Next is the application side of it, microsegmentation that I just mentioned. I joked about a little bit, but there's the app side of it, right? And then there's the other. If there's the third party pieces you need to add on, and the encryption and pieces like that. So it's a whole full stack conversation as far as Nutanix is concerned, and we do a great job protecting.
So
I was going to just add on one point there on the modernization. We do see a lot of people still running older generations of Intel hardware and Nutanix software, and we did some performance measurements recently on Sapphire Rapids that showed something like a 10 or 11 server to 1 server improvement ratio, moving from first generation Xeon to fourth generation Xeon. And when you think about that, take 10 of your HCI servers and get one new one. And what more workloads could you do on, a 4 or 8 node cluster? And how much more efficient is that? And how much, space and power and cooling can you save as part of that data center modernization effort? So, it's definitely worthwhile, and it pays off to modernize that on-premise infrastructure. And when you can bring in things like the Nutanix cloud platform to make it a more seamless experience together with your public cloud, and be able to manage with that control plane across all those environments, it really becomes a no-brainer at that point.
Yeah, and I think Matt mentioned it a second ago, right? It can come down to that sustainability. That I think we kind of breezed over it a little bit, but if you think about an organization that might move from that traditional SAN over to the new hardware, and if they're cutting from 10 down to 1, I mean, we have customer stories where there was an engineering firm that went from 10 rows down to a quarter row, and just think of the power savings. Think of the power savings there. I mean, we used to talk about footprint savings because people were running out of space and so forth, but think of the cooling and the power from going from 10 to a quarter. I mean that's, you can see that when when you're writing a check, writing the power paid for that. But it's pretty crazy. Yeah. It's a big savings.
I'm glad you said that, Scott, Allan, because there are two elements there, right? That from a sustainability perspective, there's we all want to do right by Mother Earth, right? And be good stewards, right? And that's an important element. And every IT executive I speak to now, every business leader I speak to now, talks about sustainability as one of their measurable goals, right? That's something they're going by. The other is the pragmatic approach, or the pragmatic aspect, and that is, I'm saving a whole lot of money. The check I'm writing out to the Edison company, to National Grid, whoever that power company is a lot less than it was, with previous generations of hardware and software. That alone, those two factors alone are a reason to consider kind of upgrading and refreshing. And Christine, I love how you hit it. It's not one or the other. It's not upgrade my hardware, but keep the same software, or upgrade my software, but keep it. You've got to upgrade both of these to really reach the full potential of those savings. Definitely, without a doubt.
It sounds like something like lifecycle management that Nutanix can bring to the table to make all those upgrades simple on the software side, right? Man,
one-click upgrades. Isn't that what you guys have? Yeah, it's awesome.
Right. Help you upgrade the whole stack. It's simple.
I'm like a late night talk show host, just kind of giving you these leads. Hey, let me ask you about this, Alan, because I think this is, as I learn about newer technologies, not even newer technologies, but things that Nutanix does. One of the things I find really fascinating, it's a struggle that everybody talks about, and that is cloud costs, right? There is what I think I'm going to pay in cloud costs, and there's what I pay in cloud costs, and one is exponentially more than the other. You have some capabilities within your cloud management platform that kind of allow you to kind of analyze and make suggestions based on what you're seeing, right?
Yeah. So Nutanix Cloud Manager will allow you to see everything, right, and be able to dig down. Do organizations know how much a particular VM is costing, right? And we can allow you to put the costs in and do the comparison and see what maybe AWS is charging, and then be able to see what you're paying for a particular VM. But it's being able to show those costs to the organization. Do you have a group that's eating up all the VMs, right? How many VMs are they using? Or maybe there's a particular engineer that's using, and it's not about putting a spotlight on anybody. It's saying, hey, look how much we're spending here. Can we improve? And it's being able to report on it and show what everything, where the costs are going and things like that. But for sure, Nutanix Cloud Manager can really dig down and give those costs that organizations might be looking for.
It's such a big part of the discussion especially as we talk about the fact that these modern data estates are equal parts on-prem, off-prem, and in the edge, right? It's understanding where my best performance per dollar kind of equation sits, whether it's in my data center or in AWS, in Azure, Google Cloud OCI. Where to run that training model, right, on-prem in the cloud. I mean, being able to figure that out is a huge.
But Christine was talking about it earlier. It's part of the cloud smart, right? I mean, what are you spending for this application for it to run on a public cloud? Can we maybe save some dollars by bringing it on-prem, or vice versa, right? But by being able to see the expenses, being cloud smart and being able to know where that application should run should be part of the discussion for sure.
And certainly cost is, a critical factor, but there's also requirements such as, who needs to access the data or the workload, right? Security concerns, et cetera. So there's a lot of different factors, I think, that sort of play into it. But if you have sort of a consistent underlying infrastructure based on Nutanix and Intel, that gives you the agility to be able to move workloads around when requirements change, or you discover something costs more in one environment than you expected. You've sort of got that agility built in.
Yeah. And I think Nutanix has some of that built into its NC. Can I be cool and call it NCM? And not Nutanix Cloud Manager.
I think you're looking for NC2, man. Nutanix Cloud Clusters.
I know so many.
But the compliance capabilities, I thought I was reading somewhere about compliance capabilities.
That's NCM. Yeah. Well,
and yeah,
I thought you were talking about the moving workloads, not the compliance piece.
Well, that too, but the compliance stuff I think is really neat, because this is another area where I think a lot of organizations think they have a handle on data sovereignty and kind of regulatory compliance when they're not always aware of where data is moving. Right, data is in flight always, and we, even though we think we have that data path kind of mapped, we're not always aware of what applications are using it and what's pulling it. So. These are just really cool capabilities.
Especially, I mean, even the, when you're talking about the public cloud, right? Where is this data living, right? Yeah. Am I compliant with it being? Am I in country? Am I out of country? So yeah, being able to see where all that lives is important and can be expensive.
Hey, let me ask you both a question, and we're gonna be wrapping up here in a second. But I have this genuinely curious. Do either of you, when's the last time either of you have spoken to an IT person or a business person who was not using the public cloud, to some degree?
I did. I had a healthcare conference last year, and there was a hospital. So there was a hospital that was zero public cloud. So
wow.
I told you we muted him at the beginning.
No, I can't remember the last time. I mean, really, I think that most organizations now recognize hybrid cloud is the way to go, right? They're going to have a mix of public clouds, and they need to be modernizing their on-premise infrastructure to make it more cloud-like. So I think that really is the path forward that most organizations recognize today.
Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of the takeaway for this thing, right? We live in a data-driven world. It is a hybrid multi-cloud environment that we live in, without a doubt, except for that one person that Alan spoke to a year ago. I don't even believe it, but and in the edge, some would call it nascent, some would call it emerging, some would call it like it's here. It's getting bigger and bigger, and data is driving. And in order to support the data-driven needs of the enterprise, Nutanix-driven environments that are powered by Intel are a great option for organizations of any type that are focused on control, simplicity, and agility. So that's my takeaway based on what we've talked about. If you guys disagree, then you have a problem and we need to edit it out, but I hope you don't.
That was a good summary. That was a great summary.
Yeah, I like that. That was great.
Last question for you. Okay, this is the last question before we go off. Favorite baseball teams? Go. Alan, you better, I swear, if you don't say the Red Sox.
You got to say Red Sox, yeah.
Okay. Christine, you have a favorite baseball team?
Well, I grew up with the Twins in Minnesota, but I also we've got a fun minor league team in Hillsboro, Oregon here called the Hops, and it's just a hoot to go to their games.
Awesome. Hey, I have a question for you. Is that the team that used to be in Portland right by Goose Hollow there?
No, I think that there was like a big gap of time between those. Like they were there, I think, decades ago, and then there was nothing for a while, and then
right on. That's fantastic.
It's pretty fun.
All right. With that said, Christine, Alan, thank you for joining me. I like to kind of throw something interesting in at the end. Sorry about that. Thanks for joining me. This was a fun conversation. And for the listeners and viewers, we do have a URL that we'll send you to if you're interested in learning more about how Nutanix and Intel are driving the modernized data center. So please do visit that, download the white paper, learn more, and reach out to us with any questions you have. Guys, thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Alan. It's great.
Thanks, Christine.